TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 28. Tanner Lynn Horner, otherwise known as Tandlaw777 on TikTok. Creator class type, creeper. Specialty, throne posting. Claim to fame, the literal face of evil. So while many of you out there may know his name, this is by far the smallest account we've covered in this particular series. Currently sitting at 659 followers, the then 31-year-old partial TikToker out of Texas would post a total of 4 videos on the platform. Now 2 of those have since been taken down, with the remaining uploads merely containing a couple of duets, which are just rather terrible attempts at being funny. But that's not why you're here. On November 30th of 2022, Tanner is out delivering packages for FedEx along his route in Paradise, Texas. Well, as he begins backing out of a customer's driveway, he hears this loud bang at the back of the truck, followed by what sounds like a little girl crying. And upon further inspection, he discovers that yes, he has in fact hit a 7-year-old girl by the name of Athena Strand. Now, although yes, she was a little banged up, Athena was otherwise in perfectly good condition. However, it was at this point Horner grabs Athena, throws her into the truck, and begins peeling out of the neighborhood as fast as he possibly can. Now within that same hour, her stepmother has already contacted the police, and Athena has not only become a missing person, but this huge search is launched in the immediate area, not knowing it's fairly likely her life had already been taken. You see, Horner had driven her just over 10 miles away, to a backwoods area neighboring the town of Boyd. It was there he would proceed to strangle her in the back of that very van, but not before making an extremely brutal but failed attempt to break her neck. Now within just a couple of days of her disappearance, investigators already had a pretty solid lead on Horner, and upon bringing him in for questioning, he eventually cracks, not only giving a full-blown confession in the same story that I just told you, he would also lead them to the exact location of her body. And on December 2nd of that same year, Athena had finally been located. Horner has since been charged with 1 count of capital murder of a person under the age of 10. He also faces a kidnapping charge as well as 2 additional charges of SA on a minor in a completely unrelated case. With that, they will be seeking the death penalty on Horner for this crime, placing him on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 29. Now this one is a particularly strange episode. Reason being, it is the first instance in which 3 separate creators are all being added to the list at the same time. With that in mind, Renisha Gretsch, Shania Gretsch, and Chloe Denman. Creator class types, I wanna be famous. Specialty, for all the wrong reasons. Claim to fame, torturing somebody in one of the most brutal acts of betrayal on the entirety of this platform. Well, on March 16th of 2023, the 3 TikTokers essentially lured 14-year-old Kira Hart to one of the teens' homes. This was done under the false pretense of attending a sleepover. Well, it was during the course of that night, Kira was literally tortured for several hours, being slapped, hit, even going as far as to attack her with a knife repeatedly during the session. What's more is, they would not only film quite a bit of this attack, but they would quite literally post the evidence online. And after everything was said and done, the girls threw her out of the house, where her parents would later find her in serious need of medical attention. The photos of the aftermath would go absolutely viral, sparking outrage in the days preceding the attacks. Now, to make things even more sadistic, the 3 TikTokers would go on to use this as a ploy to become famous, essentially acting like these horrible female versions of Jake Paul. But make no mistake about it, it's not like they talked smack about someone and got into a quick scuffle. They quite literally lured someone into their home, tortured their victim, and threw her out of the house, placing them on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, Episode 3, Zachary Latham Update. So real quick, for those of you who don't know, Zach is the kid who's currently on trial for killing his neighbor William Durham Sr. You know, that kid who allegedly killed someone to become TikTok famous? Well, turns out one of the biggest things people are now saying in this trial is that maybe Zach in fact acted in self-defense. Some of you may remember in my YouTube video about this case, I stated there was allegedly a video shot by Zach's girlfriend, and if it were to be showed in court, Zach's legal team stated it would clearly show he acted in self-defense. Now, while originally he was told they were not going to be allowed to use this as evidence on his behalf, that's all changed. They have since released the following video.
Back out! Back up! Big! Get off of my property.
Oh, you got a jump on my property? You got me?
Get off the property. Get off of the property.
Till next time on TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 31. Sarah Stewart, otherwise known as Mrs. Stewart 0718 on TikTok. Creator class type, tell me I'm pretty. Specialty, fishing for your compliments. Claim to fame, strap in and get ready, because this one goes deep. Well, Sarah began posting on TikTok back in April of 2020. That being said, most of her content could quite literally be deemed as compliment fishing, along with the occasional post involving her husband or a few of her children. But I think by now we all realize this isn't why you're here. In the evening hours of October 30th, 2022, emergency services out of Spartanburg, South Carolina receive a phone call in regards to a child in serious need of medical attention. Upon arrival, they are told a 6-year-old child by the name of Aiden has fallen off a recliner, banged his head on the floor, and is currently having a seizure. And well, upon attending to this child, it was quickly discovered the situation was getting more and more grim with every second that passed by. Reason being, he was also experiencing heart palpitations and his breathing was getting extremely sporadic. They would try their best to keep him alive as they headed to the hospital. But unfortunately, not too long after they arrived, Aiden would pass away. Now I'm sure at this point, a lot of you are thinking, why are you telling us this story about a parent that went through something extremely unfortunate and traumatizing as this? Well, here's the thing. Emergency services as well as responding officers had taken note that Aiden's living conditions were extremely filthy. In addition to this, multiple bruises were found all over him in various stages of healing. It was at this point an investigation into the death of Aiden began, and in due time, one hell of a disturbing truth would be revealed. The official coroner's report stated Aiden had more than enough diphenhydramine in his system to kill a full-grown adult. And for those of you who don't know, this is the active ingredient found in Benadryl. Now, Sarah has since confessed to giving him copious amounts of the substance due to the fact he was hyperactive, and she had been doing this for quite a while, so in order to keep him sedated the way she wanted him to be, she would have to continue giving him more and more every time, till eventually she killed him. Now, the story doesn't end there. Neither her husband Christopher or Sarah were actually Aiden's biological parents, and here's where things get even worse. Child Protective Services had been sent out to speak with the couple several times. Upon doing so, multiple reports in regards to child abuse, specifically to do with Aiden, had been filed. However, nothing ever really came of them. I leave you with this.
Stewie. Yeah? It's not your fault. What? It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault.
With that, Sarah makes the list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 32. Denise Frazier, otherwise known as DNiceFrazier619 on TikTok. Creator class type, loves dogs. Specialty, that ain't right. Claim to fame, trust me, you really don't want to know. But for those of you who do, I'm not gonna lie, this is without a doubt one of the most peculiar situations we have looked into in the entirety of this series. In addition to this, various sources lead to all of these alternate accounts, and while many of these sources state she is a prominent TikToker, at best her total following base seems to be about 10K distributed between those accounts. With that, this video is about to take a very weird and downright disturbing turn. Well, back in February, some girl out of Mississippi posted a Snapchat quite literally getting it on with a dog. This would turn out to be no other than the TikToker herself. Almost immediately, it had gone absolutely viral. And while she would try her best to shut down all these rumors on her TikTok, people would take note of a couple of things. On one end of the spectrum, we get a few videos of Denise lip syncing, followed by content like this.
This is a work of
along with another video I'm not going to show you involving Denise twerking directly in front of her dog's face. And I think this really goes without saying, those two posts in combination with said rumors really didn't help her case. But then, earlier this week, Denise was arrested for filming and posting the video while her dogs were taken to an animal hospital nearby. Sergeant J.D. Carter of the Jones County, Mississippi Sheriff's Department had the following to say. JCSD is in possession of several videos so graphic we are not at liberty to release them or even discuss the contents of said videos. In my 17 years in law enforcement, this is by far one of the most disturbing cases I've ever looked into, and the investigation into this case is far from over. End quote. With that, Denise has officially been booked under charges of animal cruelty and unnatural intercourse with a bond of $25,000, becoming yet another one of those TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 33. Farron Jill Hudson, otherwise known as Alabama Mermaid on TikTok. Creator class type, loves Jesus. Specialty, I'm just a good old-hearted Christian woman. Claim to fame, most definitely not. So this is yet another one of those cases where things on social media truly aren't as they seem to be, and this just drives that point home to where no matter who it is you may be following, just know they may very well be one of the most revolting people in real life you could possibly ever meet. With that in mind, many of her uploads revolved around her devotion to being this sort of born-again Christian with some sort of troubled past. Or at least, this is how she had been portraying herself to the roughly 7,000 individuals that had been following her account. You see, back in 2021, her then husband Jason was arrested under 5 charges of possession of obscene matter depicting a child under the age of 17. And as time went on, they would actually end up indicting him on a total of 76 counts of possession of CP. It was at this point Jason exclaimed that much of the so-called evidence found by forensic investigators had been planted. Shortly thereafter, the Alabama law enforcement agency began looking into the case. And while they found absolutely no evidence that anything had been fabricated or planted, they did in fact find evidence quite literally showing Jill participating in some of these acts. What's more is, upon her arrest, she would go on to call a family member on a recorded line, asking them to go to her home and begin the process of destroying evidence. Well, little did she know at the time, law enforcement personnel had been listening in to that very phone call. And this, coupled with the severity of her actions along with the threat she poses to the victim, Jill is currently being held with no bond until the date of her trial. In addition to this, Jill currently faces a slew of charges included but not limited to the following: SA of a child under the age of 12, as well as other charges involving, let's just say, using objects to perform these actions. I leave you with this.
If they cared about you, and I'm talking to myself, but if they truly cared about you, then hurting you would hurt them. And if hurting you doesn't hurt them, then they're not for you.
Placing her on our list of TikTokers who did terrible things, episode 34. Brenton Fillers, otherwise known as the TikTok trickster on pretty much every single media source that has posted an article about this incident. Creator class type, debatable. Specialty, conman. Claim to fame, the following series of events. So I will tell you this, there is a bit of a technicality with this one. The TikToker in question allegedly had several different accounts. However, not a single one of them had ever been associated with his real name, even giving a hint as to where he may have been from or who he actually was. Well, according to multiple sources, Brenton has been conning women and swindling his way through life for the past 30 years, often posing as this sort of wealthy businessman in order to get close to them. Essentially, for the past few years, he had been using the platform in order to meet women and convince them to invest in his supposed business ventures, thus promising high rates of returns on those investments. However, as stated by police, Fillers would then use that money for his own personal expenses, keeping up a rather lavish lifestyle without ever having to do any real honest or actual work. Well, over the past 3 decades, his crimes include, but are not limited to, stealing a car in Tennessee, stealing property in Alabama, multiple counts of credit card fraud in Arkansas as well as other states, stealing over $42,000 from a single victim in Texas over the span of 3 weeks, but worst of all, he is also wanted for the R word of an 11-year-old boy in Texas. Well, Fillers was recently arrested in Kentucky on April 14th of this year, after a doctor allegedly used his phone to contact friends and family. Well, little did he know he would actually be contacting a victim in the process, and that victim then got a hold of law enforcement, directing them to that medical center. Chief Barber of the Spanish Fort PD in Alabama had the following to say: "He's a criminal and a low-life predator. Not only a con artist, but he's wanted for the R word of an 11-year-old boy in the state of Texas. And what's scary to me is that he's living with these women, visiting these women who have kids, and well, while we do have him in custody, he has been in custody over 30 times. This needs to stop." The latter comment of which refers to the fact that although yes, he had been arrested on several occasions, he'd always just bail himself out, skip town, and resume hiding out under one of more than 27 different aliases. So that's it, y'all. That is gonna do it for this episode of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 34. Lynn Casey Parnell, otherwise known as Know Your Truth 99 on TikTok. Creator class type, TikTok Live. Specialty, battler. Claim to fame, whacked out beyond belief. Well, the 37-year-old TikToker out of Illinois has been on the platform for quite a while, battling people and making a decent amount of money during her live streams. However, just recently, Parnell has plunged into the spotlight due to a rather disturbing controversy. You see, back in 2011, she, along with a bunch of other individuals, had been attending a party, and pretty much everyone inside that home was highly inebriated on various different substances. And pregnant at the time, Lynn actually ended up going into labor inside this home. She then went in the bathroom, gave birth, pulled him out of the toilet, wrapped him in a towel assuming he had passed away, and sealed him into a garbage bag. It wasn't until several hours later authorities had been notified. However, it had been far too late. Cause of death, asphyxiation from being placed into that garbage bag. Parnell was then sentenced to 3 years for manslaughter. In addition to this, since this whole story has came to light, Casey has either deactivated or privated most of her socials, including both of her TikTok accounts. You know what it is, placing her on the list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 35. Kathy Vu, otherwise known as Kaviti Vu on TikTok. Creator class type, generic. Specialty, influencer. Claim to fame, cleanup on aisle 3. Well, leading up to March of this year, the 23-year-old TikToker and OnlyFans model out of Texas had posted about 1,700 videos on the platform. And throughout the course of this time period, she had racked up a grand total of more than 9 million likes, as well as 153,000 followers. That being said, most of her uploads very much fell into the sort of stereotypical Instagram model style of content, mainly in an effort to promote her OnlyFans as well as her Amazon storefront. Essentially, she had been posting videos talking about her most recent shopping hauls, or how her day went, filming herself working out, or even making a short video about how much she loved her boyfriend. And this is where things take a disturbing turn. On January 27th of this year, Houston PD received a phone call about a Prius that had just been idling in a neighbor's garage for the past few hours. Upon arrival, they discover a deceased 35-year-old Dana Rizdal in that home, having been shot several times. In addition to this, the man's truck was absolutely nowhere to be found. Moreover, that Prius belonged to a 37-year-old man by the name of James Martin, who was also reported to be missing. Well, that Prius would end up getting towed to the impound lot, where it wouldn't be searched until a full 3 days later, when surprise, surprise, the body of James was discovered deceased in that trunk, also having been shot several times. Now, if we fast forward to March, Kathy's boyfriend, 26-year-old Polly Fawn, as well as another individual by the name of Jaden Gwynn, have become wanted for those murders. In addition to this, it is said the motives for doing so are highly likely to be drug-related, as copious amounts of certain substances were found within the victim's home. Now, at this point, I'm sure you're thinking, hey, Slamurai, that's great and all, but she's not responsible for everything her boyfriend does. And well, yes, you are correct. We, as human beings, can in fact control the things we do, such as allegedly purchasing various cleaning supplies on the day of the murder, communicating with him before, during, and after despite stating she had no idea what had gone down, and lastly, cleaning up the crime scene on behalf of the love of her life, who had apparently given her an iPad on the day she did so. Kathy Vu has been charged with 1 count of tampering with evidence and has since bailed herself out. She's also been forced to surrender her passport and must wear an ankle monitoring device until the date of her trial. This is mainly due to the fact it is believed Polly and Jaden have since fled the country, quite possibly heading back across the pond to Vietnam. Just another one of those TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 36. Lamar Lewis Cruz, aka Lil Mar, otherwise known as Mar the Trucker on TikTok. Creator class type, SoundCloud Trucker. Specialty, controversial as claim to fame, weird, funny, or downright disgusting, depending on what you know so far. Well, the now 22-year-old Seattle-born rapper is absolutely no stranger to controversy. And by now, I'm sure a few of you have seen him on various platforms rolling around in this galaxied-out Corvette while rapping about his body count. However, to truly understand his downfall, we have to take it back to 2018 when he posted a now viral video documenting his exchange with, let's just say, a local call girl, to which...
Out here in the middle of nowhere on a fucking dead end at this weird-ass looking creepy hotel. Wish me luck!
Destination is on your right.
Woo! I did it! I lost my virginity.
Well, that video went so viral, it was enough to get his name out there and on the map. On the other hand, this was only the beginning of a long list of poor decisions ultimately leading to a much bigger problem. Now, we're not going to discuss how he got his first face tattoo on an impulse, then set up a GoFundMe page in order to get it removed 2 weeks later, or the time he did something utterly disgusting with a chicken sandwich, devoured it, then posted the video online. And to be quite honest, we can even look past the time he was arrested for filming himself cutting it up, rolling down the highway, driving erratic as hell. You see, by early 2019, Marr had finally developed the master plan, one that would absolutely catapult him into the stratosphere of internet stardom. That is, starting a false rumor he had impregnated an individual well below the age of 18. But it was the following headlines that truly did him in, stating Little Marr had allegedly an underage girl in a Walmart parking lot, a crime to which he would later spend 4 months behind bars after accepting a plea deal. Now, it's worth pointing out, although he has since addressed this situation many times, stating that everything was just a simple misunderstanding and that she lied about her age, the damage had already been done. Anyone who had actually been listening to his music essentially dipped out. Which brings us to Marr the Trucker, with his first few uploads garnering some of the most canted engagement since the My Chalky Milk Girl, which, for those of you who don't know,
Chalky milk. Don't you touch my junk.
legend has it, he is still trying to back that truck into his spot on TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 37. God Papa the Greatest and Empress Lupita. Creator class types, whatever this is. Specialty, random AF. Claim to fame, absolutely insane. Well, this now viral couple out of Ghana has been posting on the platform since 2019. But it wasn't until just recently they started gaining a little more notoriety, pulling in some fairly respectable numbers in the months preceding. However, they have gained so much traction over the past 24 hours, various sources from around the globe are simply referring to them as the Ghana viral couple. And while I'd love to sit here and tell you some heartwarming story about puppies, kittens, and hot cocoa, this isn't why you're here. Well, just recently, their 8-year-old son, El Sa, fled the couple's home and headed straight for the house of a journalist by the name of Kofi Adoma. And the story he gave him is nothing short of horrifying. El Sa went into detail about these extremely brutal instances of abuse he had been through alongside his older brother, a list of which included but was not limited to the following: living under the constant threat of being executed by his father, not allowing them to eat for days on end, being used in rituals against their will, and similarly to Zykia Duncan 5 from episode 8, on the off chance they were actually given a meal, it would be filled to the brim with some of the most gut-wrenching ingredients no human should ever have to eat. And if you think that's bad, trust me, things are about to get a whole lot worse. Most importantly, it was what they had done to his older brother El Wa. One evening, his parents would not only straight up poison him, but as the night went on and his condition continued to worsen, they ultimately became impatient waiting for him to pass, and at some point, they carry El Wa out back and proceed to literally bury him alive. El Sa would even go into heart-wrenching details about the horrific screams he could hear coming from behind the house, and in fear that he may suffer a similar fate, he ended up running away. Well, just a few days ago, the recorded interview between Kofi Adoma and El Sa was released, gaining a fair amount of notoriety in the process. And within just a few hours, that couple is on TikTok clapping back at their very own 8-year-old son, with their main argument being that he is a petty thief and that no one should believe him. All of this leading up to what just happened in the past 24 hours. The couple was officially placed under arrest, and Lupita's confession is ultimately one of the most disturbing things you will ever hear, essentially stating she did Ghana a service by getting rid of him, going into detail about how he was a demon, and that if El Wa was to grow up, he'd create even more demons endangering the entire country of Ghana. And so, to prevent any future anguish to her people, she had taken El Wa's life and offered him up as a sacrifice, placing them on our list of TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 38. James Lee Bonewits, otherwise known as Onewits on TikTok. Creator class type, debatable. Specialty, duetting your videos. Claim to fame, one of the most senseless acts of violence ever committed by any user on this platform. At around 7:15 p.m. on June 23rd, 2022. Bonewitz parks his car at a gas station near the 700 block of White Lock Street, Huntington, Indiana. He then whips out a couple of knives and begins pacing down the street, looking to attack the first person he comes across. Well, just so happens a man by the name of Terry Salmon, currently outside at the time, would be the first of 4 individuals savagely attacked for no reason at all. It was at this point a man by the name of Danny England steps out back of his house to see what's going on. Bonewitz then charges at Danny, tagging him one time in the chest, killing him in the process. Bonewitz then turned his attention to Danny's wife, Caitlin, running into their home and delivering several fatal blows to her as well, directly in front of her own children. Well, immediately after this particular attack, another neighbor is now walking into the England's home. Bonewitz then rushes out the front door, tagging him several times with those knives. Unfortunately, Danny and Caitlin would both succumb to their injuries. And here's one of those things that just makes this case a little bit more disturbing. Just 1 month prior, Danny and Caitlin had gotten married, and that very next morning they were scheduled to move out. Well, Bonewitz then fled the scene and would later be apprehended while walking through a field absolutely covered in the evidence of this crime. And upon his arrest, he immediately asked for a lawyer. As of now, he has given no specific motive for this crime. Bonewitz is currently being held on no bond, looking at 2 counts of attempted murder as well as 2 counts of murder, placing him on the list of TikTokers who did terrible things, the worst of the worst. As many of you know, this is a series that delves into the dark side of TikTok, discussing some of the most shocking and brutal crimes ever committed by individuals associated with this platform. With that, today we'll be giving you your top 3 picks for the worst among the absolute worst. As always, these are in no particular order. Let's begin. Coming in at number 1, we have Nicola Priest from episode 10. This is the TikToker who unleashed such a savage and brutal attack on her very own daughter. The injuries were consistent to that of a pedestrian being struck by a vehicle going over 40 miles an hour. Now, many of the details regarding her injuries are simply too gruesome to mention on this platform. What we can tell you is that her daughter Kaylee spent the next few hours alone in her bedroom, slipping in and out of consciousness until she finally passed away. What's worse is, Nicola wouldn't call emergency services until the following morning, hours after Kaylee had paired. And why, you might ask? Because Kaylee wasn't ready to go to bed yet, thus interrupting Nicola's alone time with her then boyfriend Caleb Redford. Conviction: manslaughter. Sentence: 14 years. Coming in at number 2, we have Claire Miller from episode 4. Now I gotta tell you, this is probably the most notable case on this list, as Claire would quite literally become famous for taking the life of her very own sister. See, one night back in February of 2021, just after her parents had gone to bed, Claire began experiencing hallucinations due to what some sources state was a complete lapse in sanity. It was at this point she grabbed a kitchen knife, went into her sister's bedroom, and proceeded to get rid of the manifestation. Just so happened, the entity was no other than her sleeping sister. Now, although Claire was only 14 years old at the time of the incident, it was fairly quickly determined she will be charged as an adult when they are able to do so. And before we get to number 3, I'd just like to say, if you are into these types of stories, we post longer, more detailed videos about these incidents on our YouTube, including the first 2 you just heard. And it's the same handle as here. Moving on. Last but not least, we have Posh Mama from episode 19. Well, back in 2013, Posh Mama, along with her then boyfriend, Jeremy, are having an argument after pulling into their driveway. And as Jeremy exits the vehicle, Posh Mama slams the pedal to the metal, careening straight through him, killing him on impact. She would then head off to a local bar with her ex-boyfriend and just drink the night away. And more recently, she's not only filed a lawsuit against another TikToker named Shiloh Was Here, but she is also handing out swift cease and desists to pretty much anyone that talks about the incident, except for me and Jolly Good Ginger. So there's that. Conviction: manslaughter. Sentence: 2.5 years. At any rate, this has been TikTokers Who Did Terrible Things, episode 40. Terry Kemper, otherwise known as Tear Bear on TikTok. Creator class type: social justice. Specialty: anti-bullying. Claim to fame: strap in and get ready, because this one's gonna make you angry. So this is yet another one of those accounts that flew under the radar for quite some time, with a little over 2,500 followers as of just a few days ago. However, it was only within the last week or so that people began to realize just who this individual was behind closed doors. And believe me, it is not pretty. But to truly understand the gravity of the situation, we gotta take it back to 2003, when Kemper was first found guilty of SA on a child under the age of 5. That being said, what y'all have been told told up to this point is only a fraction of the rabbit hole that is this case. Not only has he admitted to doing the very same thing to a 4-year-old, but he was also found guilty in a completely unrelated yet similar instance on a 13-year-old as well. The following series of events will clearly show you the danger this individual poses to the platform. You see, during Terry's time at Racine Correctional, or RCI for short, he got into a dispute with the warden over certain materials he wanted to indulge in. Essentially, Terry liked to read anime, hentai, and manga comics. However, in his words, only 15 to 20 out of the 50 publications he had been requesting were actually approved for him to view. Publications depicting the exploitation of children. Well, Terry had such an issue with this, he actually ended up taking it to court. The man literally fought the warden for what he felt was his right to view that content. Now, his main issue with the denial of those publications were that they were subject to multiple reviews. Think of it sort of like a tier system. Upon the content's initial review, a separate, more thorough review by the facility's licensed psychologist may be requested. The psychologist then cross-references this material with the inmate's profile, ensuring the content doesn't interfere with the treatment of that inmate or anyone else in the facility, thus making the process for poor little Terry of obtaining his fix take even longer. And let's just say, he didn't really like that. More so, during this time period, there were several instances in which more than 100 pounds of publications were removed from his cell. Yes, you heard that right. There was so much material removed, they had stopped counting and began measuring it by weight. At any rate, this content was then sent to his mother's house for safekeeping until his release. But it was also during this time period, Terry was advised to participate in level 4 SO treatment. However, he was booted prior to his first session for refusing to sign a particular segment of the paperwork, a section pertaining to material he would no longer be allowed to purchase. In addition to this, he was also found to be yet again in possession of illicit material. Well, upon his release onto extended supervision in 2011, within less than a year, he had violated the terms of his agreement by engaging in physically assaultive behavior. Not only had he reverted to viewing that illicit content, but he had also been in contact with 3 separate females through Facebook who were not yet of age. And this is where things begin to rapidly spiral out of control. October of 2012, Terry was forced to participate in a rehabilitative program, but just 2 months in, he completely stopped showing up. 2 months later, in December of that same year, he goes to prison once again for failing to do so. Then in March of 2015, Kemper was released on probation once again. However, in January of 2016, he was arrested for contacting one of his previous victims through Facebook. Now keep in mind, the entire time this has been going on, he has failed to complete any sort of treatment whatsoever. And in doing so, Terry firmly believed he should have been allowed to view that illicit material simply due to the fact he opted out of the treatment and hadn't signed the paperwork stating he wasn't allowed to. And throughout the entire course of just about every single one of his incarcerations, he has battled this over and over again. Now, this may be a bit of a stretch, but I think I speak for a great deal of us when I say, thankfully his claim was thrown out and he was continuously denied said material while behind bars. That being said, Kemper was officially released once again in 2020, which leads us to what just happened over the past 24 hours. TikToker Tyler the Titan posted an extremely well put together video bringing the situation to light. I urge each and every one of you to check it out and give him the credit he deserves for doing so. It was at this point, larger creators such as Quinn Pratt, Tizian, and JD Delay began to press the issue as well. That being said, although Kemper's main account was taken down, he has since created a backup, and word is, people in the background are currently working with TikTok to try and get it taken down. Lastly, although there is a dispute on whether or not Terry was a level 2 or level 3 SO, TikTok has a very strong policy against this type of behavior. It doesn't matter what level you are, your presence is quite simply not welcome on this platform. Friends and frenemies alike, I leave you with this.
You reveal your ignorance and your stupidity when you say that I'm level 3. I'm level 2.
I'll bet. Placing Terry on our list of